one of the things at the heart of my campaign, and as a nation, we really have a struggle with what George Erasmus would call common memory. When he was talking and writing a letter about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission up in Canada, he's from the Dene Nation up there, and he's a leader among the people. And he said where common memory is lacking, where people do not share in the same past, there can be no real community. If you want to build community, he said, you have to start by creating common memory. I think that quote is genius, and it gets to the heart of our nation's problem with race, because as a country, the United States of America does not have a common memory. We have a white majority that remembers a mythological history of discovery, expansion, opportunity, and exceptionalism. And we have communities of color and women and other marginalized communities that have the lived experience of stolen lands, broken treaties, slavery, Jim Crow laws, boarding schools, massacres, internment camps, mass incarceration, families separated at our borders, and there's no common memory. You know, people are acting like this crisis at the border right now is the first time we've seen this. But the United States of America has been very effective at separating children from their families throughout its entire existence. Whether it's through the slave trade or through the boarding schools or through the massacres, what President Trump is doing is not unique, it's not new. This is what our nation does. This is our history, and the fact that we don't have this common memory. And so many candidates and many Americans would like to believe that the United States of America struggles with issues like racism and sexism and white supremacy in spite of our foundations. In other words, there's this belief that we have these great foundations and we're just not living up to them. But the truth of the matter is, if you read our Declaration of Independence, which 30 lines after the statement all men are created equal calls natives merciless Indian savages, when we have a constitution that begins with we the people, and Article 1, Section 2 never mentions women, specifically excludes natives and counts Africans as 3/5 of a person. When we have a 13th Amendment that most people think abolishes slavery, but actually just redefines and codifies it under the jurisdiction of the criminal justice system. When we have these systemic foundational issues of racism, sexism, and white supremacy, we have to acknowledge the United States of America is racist, sexist, and white supremacist, not in spite of our foundations, but because of them. And these are the dialogues we need to have. These are the conversations we need to have. As I said at the forum, we don't need a new particular law protecting this vulnerable community or that vulnerable demographic. We need a new basis for our laws, which is where at the center of my platform, one of the key questions I'm asking is, let's build a nation where for the very first time, we the people truly means all the people. And to get there, I'm proposing that the United States of America needs a national dialogue on race, gender, and class. A conversation I would put on par with the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions that happened in South Africa, in Rwanda, and in Canada. I would call ours Truth and Conciliation, though, because reconciliation implies there was a previous harmony, which is not accurate. And I think we need one sooner rather than later, which is why this is one of the center planks of my platform, is we need to have this dialogue, we need to create this common memory, we need to acknowledge our past and ask the question, do we want to move forward? Do we really want to be a nation where we the people means all the people? And if we do, we have some foundational level changes that we need to make. When you serve a government that has in its foundation the dehumanization of your community, at some point you're going to have to make a stand of do you align with that or do you oppose it? And this is most clear even when we have the Supreme Court case precedents. The Supreme Court, as recently as 2005, references the doctrine of discovery and determines that the embers of sovereignty that long ago grew cold cannot be rekindled by the Oneida Indian Nation. And that opinion was written by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. See, the challenge is when you have a dehumanizing doctrine of discovery that props up your land titles, it makes white supremacy a bipartisan value. And we have very few candidates who are willing to address the foundational problems. They may want to change this policy or address that law, but there is very little energy to actually address the foundations And that is what I'm trying to do with my campaign, to bring the discussion down to the foundations. If you have a house that's built on a bad foundation, you're going to get cracks in the walls and cracks in your windowsills and a crooked floor. And you can scream about what color to paint the walls or what kind of caulking to use on your windows. But until you go into the basement and address your broken foundation, you're never going to fix the house.